All right.
Okay, so.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I'm Corey, and
I'm Troy.
And welcome to the My Life in Gaming RGB Masterclass Live, which is not technically just an RGB panel. For everyone that is interested in asking other things, you can feel free to.
Right. So, I guess, I don't know if everyone here is familiar with what we do, but, we do various videos on YouTube. I mean, we're kind of known for more tech type videos, although that was never necessarily the intention when we started making videos, but that's kind of just what we ended up focusing on a lot. But another thing that we always kind of wanted to do from the beginning was do sort of documentary type stuff where we talked to different people and kind of got their, told their story. Like, the idea behind the name My Life in Gaming was never about like my life in gaming or Corey's life in gaming. It was always supposed to be about like other, whoever was in the episode.
Yeah, it was the subject of the focus.
Right, and so like we've done several documentaries over the past few years, and we spent last year shooting a ton of interviews mostly with people involved in kind of the retro tech scene. Mm-hmm. And, it's definitely the biggest project we've ever done. I think it's going to be kind of a 5-part miniseries.
A miniseries event.
And so we've never really shown before kind of what the interviews look like, or even who all is in it. We've got 12 interviews with people that a lot of people in here will recognize, including.
Although they may recognize the name, but maybe not the faces.
Right, exactly. So it's kind of about telling their stories as well as just sort of getting the information about retro gaming and retro tech out there in a different way than what we've done
preservation,
before.
all kinds of different ways to play.
Yeah, so it's pretty complex, and we just kind of wanted to share our cast of characters, so to speak. So
the way I do like to think of myself, which is something I've always kind of been good at, is being the middleman. So the information was always out there, and the very smart, very awesome people in the scene were always out there helping people. But it takes a lot to compile all that info. And to be perfectly honest, if I knew how much time I would have sunk into this, I probably wouldn't have made the website.
So we've got the middleman here. I went back and forth with Bob so much, like trying to figure out, like Bob's like, I never really thought about what do I do?
Or, yeah, like what do I call myself?
Yeah, which is really a problem with almost anyone in this scene, because people are doing very non-standard stuff. So we finally decided to call him a facilitator and content creator. What was it I originally had? I forget what it was.
Webmaster
and podcaster. So anyway, Bob is, he is the founder of the website Retro RGB, and which was hugely important in us even discovering this kind of stuff. And he lends such a great perspective to the documentary series, because he also has like a background in technology manufacturing. So he's able to provide this very realistic assessment of what is required for getting this stuff created, and what are some pitfalls that people might not even be looking for if they were to get into this. I think a lot of people have sort of a skewed view of like, oh, this is too expensive. Why is this thing so expensive? And I think Bob is able to very well illustrate like the challenges of creating technology on a small scale.
Mm-hmm.
So you have anything to add before we move on?
You said that you had he was one of the easiest interviews to edit, because he has the longest soundbite in the entire.
So far, he's got the longest continuous uncut voice clip, because he's just got he knows all this stuff off the top of his head, and he knows what he wants to say, and he says it without a lot of filler, and Bob is a treasure to this community and a local to this area, so everyone can be proud to have him here. Speaking of locals to this area, there's actually 3 here, so.
Because tubes are meant to last like 30, 40 years. Sometimes the components around the tube fail and not the tube.
So this is Jose Cruz. When we were in New York City in September last year, we interviewed Bob and we met Jose, and we knew about Jose through Bob's videos, and he does CRT repairs, also console modding, but also RGB modding CRTs, and he's just really an expert in that area. And we were just like, oh my gosh, we gotta interview this guy. So it was very quick thing that we did, but it's also turned out to be an invaluable perspective for the documentary.
I mean, for the record, like Tri has been working on this. I've been doing everything else. So he has a lot more to say, a lot more input on specifically this project. Outside of, we were together shooting it, but he's been writing it and editing it and doing everything in relation to it for months now.
Yeah, so this.
Which is why you might see a lot more videos from specifically me.
Right.
In the meantime.
Right.
Or have seen videos from me.
But Jose was great, and I wish we had even more time to talk to him. But he is adding a lot to the story, I think.
The silicon's probably going to be good for beyond our lifetimes, but there are components in all of these old systems that have a finite lifespan, and if you don't change them, can yield damage.
So this is Voltar. I think most people usually only hear his voice in his videos. He's on camera sometimes, though.
A very smooth voice.
he is definitely an interesting character for sure. And actually, the first interview we shot for this whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because between Southern Kentucky, where Voltar is, and up through Indianapolis, is in this Midwest area that's not all that far apart, is Retro Tech Central. There's so many people involved in this.
That are within about 2 hours away from me. So it worked out well. We could time a lot of these to meet with everybody days in a row.
Yeah, so Voltar. He provides a lot of great perspectives on almost everything because he just knows the insides of these consoles as well or better than anyone. And, has created a lot of technology around them, and it just has a really well-rounded understanding of everything regarding game tech. Mm-hmm.
The AVS, that was my dream hardware since I was a kid. We thought, we're gonna make our own games, make our own console, and sell it to Nintendo.
So this is, most people know him as Bunny Boy, or by his company name, which is Retro USB. This is the guy who made the AVS, which was really the first FPGA console to really be sold. There was the Mist FPGA before then, but it wasn't really a plug and play thing. The AVS was the first thing that was just ready to just plug into your TV, pop in a cartridge, and plug in a controller and just play it. It actually beat the NT Mini to market in that regard.
Yeah, by just a couple months.
By just a couple months. I mean, he probably has the sharpest, most concise answers to any person we had, because he just you could just tell that this guy is just brilliant. Mm-hmm. His mind just works in a way that's just he just knows so much and knows exactly what he wants to say, and he lives in the sort of the Bay Area in California, which he's kind of close to Frank Cifaldi, and so they know each other. So he also has some ideas about preservation and things like that. But just a really well-rounded, intelligent person about all matters regarding retro tech. What's interesting about him is he almost exclusively cares about the NES.
Yeah,
he started to make Super Nintendo stuff for a while. He was like, I didn't grow up with this. I don't care about this. I just want to work on what I care about, which is NES. And he's, I mean, you know, we saw a world championship, or not world championships, or maybe he had one of those too.
He has everything. It's all like in this shed out back of his house that you walk inside and
It's just,
they got a marble floor. It's like all really nice.
it's got this gigantic Rob the Robot like this NES storage case that's got like a giant Rob like looming over it. It was so cool. But yeah, I mean, so forgot how I was going to say anything else about that. But and another thing that he's a pioneer in is the flash cartridge.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Power Pack.
The Power Pack, which, you know, obviously has had a huge impact now. So, you know, the Power Pack was around before, you know, EverDrives and stuff that kind of really popularized it. So,
the way I approach things is kind of bottom up. I start at one place and just build on it until it's done. You know, it's like, you know, making a mountain, you know, one grain of sand at a time. You know, it seems kind of pointless to do working on very small things. You know, just working on another small thing and another one and another one and another one. After you do a couple thousand of those, then you're done.
yeah, just do a couple thousand things.
So nonchalantly he says it too. It's like, oh,
You're done.
Yeah, you're just done.
you're done, you're done. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure everybody knows Kevtris here. We spent a long time with him. He is actually getting an entire episode of this series is dedicated to him and his story. We covered him a little bit in the Super NT episode, but this goes into his past, like all the stuff he grew up working on. We got to look at, he took us through like his journals and stuff that he wrote when he was a kid.
Yeah.
All of his old things that he would design as a kid. He had this thing where he'd drive around with it on top of a car and it would send out these infrared beams everywhere and change people's channels as he like
I don't know if I think he said he didn't actually do that, but he designed the whole thing. Maybe he did do it. I don't know. I mean, he made all kinds of crazy things, and I think what's interesting is so much of the stuff that he made in his past was really just for him. Mm-hmm. But it's just experience upon experience upon experience, and now, like, you know, he's in his 40s and he's like gained all this recognition now. Mm-hmm. And I think his story is interesting because it just goes to show, like, if you like sort of stick with what is interesting to you and what you really enjoy, like, eventually you'll just find yourself in the right place. And he has found himself very much in the right place now, where he is just designing these consoles. You know, it's almost become an annual event, you know.
He makes consoles and cryogenic
controls. His day job is he creates cryogenic controls. And the funniest thing about that, I think, is that, I mean, he's been doing this for like at least 2 decades now, and he designed a cryogenic control. This isn't for like freezing bodies, but it's like cell samples for research and stuff. But he designed one with a Z80 processor, which is like, you know, the processor in a lot of old consoles like the ColecoVision and the Sega Master System, and there's one in the Sega Genesis for backwards compatibility reasons. When he made an FPGA core for like the Master System, really just as, you know, for himself, because he hadn't released that stuff yet. Like, he reverse engineered a Z80 processor. Well, the Z80 became difficult for them to find it to install in, you know, one of their best-selling products at his day job. So he just took the FPGA core that he designed for a Sega Master System and put it in a cryogenic control. I mean, it's crazy. But we wanted to focus on Kevtris for an entire episode because he is just such a good example of, you know, we've kind of looked at these other topics in these other episodes, but like, here's like what one person has done with this stuff. This is just one example of a person who is
arguably the most successful out of everybody, I'd say.
In a sense, very, very possibly so. So at least possibly the most recognized for his work. So we kind of want to highlight that, but also, like, you know, hey, you know, maybe you can do it too. Probably not.
On that same slide, I think about all the people that have spent so much time helping newer people learn how to program. Because that's how I got started. I wasn't really a programmer before then. It was kind of my first programming language, and it's like that for a lot of people. They've never made games before, and they're just starting on NES, learning assembly language.
So again, Indiana, like people are just doing retro stuff all around Indiana. This is Joey Parcelli is mostly known as Mimblers online. I personally did not know about him until we visited Kevtris.
And he's friends with Kevin, so it was.
He works with Kevin. He works with Kevin on the cryogenic controls. And he happens to also be the founder of a website called NesDev. It's not NESDev or NesDev. It's they at least Kevtris insists it's NesDev.
That's how they say it in the UK. Nez and snez.
But anyway, so he he does a lot of like homebrew type stuff. I think he's worked on like some like new mappers for NES games and things like that. And we interviewed him kind of as a friend of Kevtris to get more insight into what he's done, and also about sort of the community of retro games. And I think a lot of people don't really think a lot about like homebrew games and like all the effort that goes into that. And I think him as well as Bunny Boy Retro USB were able to provide that perspective very well because they make games themselves. So
I think there's this weird misinterpretation that just because someone works at a company called Nintendo and has a business card that says Nintendo on it, that makes them somehow more qualified to emulate a Nintendo system. And I don't think that's true at all. I think that the collective communal knowledge that has come from open source emulation projects is like, I mean, frankly, like there is no way that Nintendo wasn't looking at open source software to figure out how their old hardware worked.
So, I mean, show of hands, who saw this guy at the convention this weekend? We have run into Frank Cifaldi like 5 different occasions and interviewed him for like 4 different projects, only one of which is actually out yet.
Yeah. We got together with him to work on something else, and then we said, well, he'd also be a good fit for this. And this. Like, we're going to be in San Francisco interviewing Bunny Boy. Can we interview you for M2?
Yeah,
So,
coincidentally, this was not in the San Francisco area. This was actually at the Galloping Ghost
in Chicago.
We were there shooting another project, and he was there as well. And so, anyway, Frank has worked on a lot of sort of the good emulation collections that have come out in recent years through Digital Eclipse. But he's most known as a preservationist and sort of a vocal proponent of preservation, and also specifically kind of the use of emulation as preservation, at least in terms of a way to make them accessible, the history of games accessible to as many people as possible. And he's got a lot of very big academic ideas about this kind of stuff, so he provides a very good, educated, intelligent perspective in that regard.
And he's been at it for a lot longer than I had any idea at first. He helped Kevin with dumping stuff a long time ago.
Yeah, this guy is responsible for the fact that we've got a complete set of unlicensed Taiwanese Famicom games available. Even in his youth, he was obsessed with we gotta find all these games and preserve them and back them up. He's very open about hey, piracy, emulation, whatever. He just wants games to be accessible. He's not shy about that, and he's very useful in terms of the story of the documentary for providing a very well-rounded perspective on emulation, especially software emulation, because a lot of people think that we're all anti-emulation or whatever, and no, that's not true at all. We just want people to play the way they want to play. We just think it's interesting to look at different ways to play. We like to play on hardware, but there's so many. This whole series is really a celebration of all the ways that you can play games and all of the ways that they have been preserved and that the hardware has been improved and changed and expanded upon. And Frank is very central to explain sort of the emulation side of that.
Even if emulation got absolutely perfect, and it has some hardware emulation in some cases, I'd still rather have the original system, the original controller, and the original game, because also if you buy the games, there's more incentive to play them. If you're downloading them all, there's no incentive really, personally, for me.
Well, this is Rachel Selesky, and she is the main person at Retro Access. She is the person that manufactures and sells RGB cables for the most part in the United States. But you might have been able to guess from her voice that she is not originally from this continent. She's actually from Northern England. And what I think is fun about that is it's like, you know, British person comes to America and sells British culture in the way of SCART connectors.
And for the record, like 2 weeks after shooting this interview, she moved to the Indiana, Ohio, Cincinnati area.
Yeah,
like
so
about 10 minutes away from me.
yeah, so we've got access to like all of these, like, or at least you do around you. You've just got access to so many like retro tech people. But actually, at this time, she was still in Florida, and I was actually in Florida shooting another freelance project. But I'm like, well, there's people I want to interview in Florida too, so I'm going to take advantage of this. So, but anyway,
I mean, this is probably a lot of people's first time seeing Rachel,
Yeah.
because you know she has like always had like the little photo
on eBay, but she's not even on eBay anymore.
Right.
So, but you know, she has really gone to great lengths to, you know, use the highest quality cable stock and to, you know, self-check, you know, how cables ought to be designed and stuff like that. But just like everyone, you know, she wasn't really talking about cables in that clip there. Just like everyone, we asked everyone a variety of questions, and it was kind of funny because this whole thing that she was saying, like, you know, you want to use the original cartridge rather than like just choosing a game from a list, like totally independently, like 3 or 4 people that we interviewed like said almost that exact same thing, and we're like, yes, that's exactly how we feel. Again, not that I have anything against emulation, but it's just like, for me, it's like I'm choosing from a list. It's just like, yeah, I died, I'm going, you know, move on, you know. So I think a big part of this is also like celebrating, like, why do people play retro games? Like, what is appealing about that? And I think she had a lot of good perspectives about that as well, including perspectives about growing up in PAL territory. You know, having to deal with that, which she said some interesting things I didn't even know about PAL. So
I think there's always going to be factions that prefer the visual to be a certain way and factions that don't care. And I think they butt heads too much, and they should just let each other be, because it's fine either way.
So this is, you're better at pronouncing his name than I am.
Jason Rausch.
Again, Indiana area.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was funny because, you know, he tells a story about selling his, you know, getting started with selling, you know, the NES, like AV modded NES. And I went back to before the channel started, and I rebought my NES off eBay, and it was from him.
Although he was a little embarrassed with how some of those early NES systems were put together.
Yeah,
He has improved his technique quite a lot over the years.
But now he's more of a middleman. Like, he's selling pre-modded stuff and also kits. Like, he doesn't do a lot of modding. He doesn't really do any modding himself anymore.
Right.
Like at least for
Right, I mean,
for people.
And that's kind of a common theme, I think, with a lot of people we talk to. Like, some people got into modding, but it's easy to get burned out on just modding systems. And I think a lot of people, they, you know, once they start understanding the technology better, they want us to do more interesting things than just install. So it's just, he provides a lot of interesting perspectives in that regard. And you know, he's just such a down-to-earth, you know, almost kind of folksy sort of guy. And he just, I feel like he provides a warm, straightforward, very real presence to the documentary.
He's very he's no BS.
Yeah.
most of the time.
Yeah. He's a good guy. We really enjoyed hanging out with him.
It's super valuable knowing how stuff works at a very fundamental level. If you just take something and implement it and don't know how it works and something goes wrong, you don't know where to start troubleshooting.
So this is Steve Kuloff. People may have seen his face in our stuff before, because we actually interviewed him like way back before the HD Retrovision cables were even released. Like, I remember at that time, we were all like nervous, like, oh, I don't know if these people seem kind of like a big deal.
They got HD in their name, and it's not really HD.
But
They give them the wrong impression, I think.
yeah, so Steve and his business partner Nick have been in a little documentary we did like years ago, 3 or 4 years ago,
Yeah,
almost.
like a little
at this
8-minute
point.
documentary. Yeah.
But yeah, so Steve is back, and the thing I really appreciate about Steve is that he just has like the highest standards of anyone in the world, and he's
like very by the book and sticks to it and sticks to the specs, and that's why all this stuff is, all their stuff is so good.
It works correctly because everything is on scopes, like
Testing.
testing. Yes, one thing he says is testing, more testing, and he provides a lot of good advice for like, hey, like here's like how to do things right, and also is someone who has started not just selling small scale stuff. Well, I mean, it is relatively small scale, but it is a business, and they've gone through lots of manufacturing stuff. I mean, he knows all these considerations and pitfalls that you run across with that kind of stuff. So I mean, he's got experience in many ways in that, as far as that goes.
He's got an awesome basement too. This is where this was shot.
Oh yeah. There was some.
So it's like a time warp.
Yeah, there were some Star Wars figures with like
cobwebs and
maybe
dust.
2 decades of dust on them.
Getting PCBs prototyped is very cheap. Flex cable is not so cheap. I mean, the minimum cost on flex cable is $100, which doesn't seem like a lot, but you may go through 3 or 4 revisions and there's $400 gone, and then it still may not work.
So this is Dan Kuntz, better known as Citrus 3000 PSI, also Indiana. What is up with Indiana?
That's crazy.
I asked Mimblers that, and he's like, I don't know. We're kind of behind the times, I guess. Nothing to do. But Dan is kind of a newcomer to the scene, and Bob was kind of a big champion of his early on. When he started doing cool things like that's a PS2 dev.
There's
kit.
one out there.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
It's the
PS2 tool. PS2.
It's the most
By
hilarious
video game
looking
trading
thing.
post.
It's like literally a fat PS2, but like just bigger. It's hilarious. This is Evan Amos,
An
who
obese PS2.
An unsung hero, I feel like, of the retro gaming scene.
everyone in this room has seen his work, but I don't know how many of you actually know who he is.
Yeah, I mean, he is somebody we wanted to do a documentary on, specifically on him, for the longest time. It's kind of the first documentary idea that we had. And we decided to integrate it into this, like, after the fact.
Right. So we again, when we were in New York City last year, we visited him, and it intended for it to be its own thing. But if we haven't been clear, this is the guy who makes all of the good hardware shots, game hardware shots on Wikipedia. And he has gone to incredible lengths to acquire as much of this stuff as possible so he can really give it the care and documentation that it deserves.
Break it down, take photos, detailed photos of every single aspect of it.
Including, the motherboard and the different layers and all that stuff. And he has done incredible work and basically dedicated his life to this. He has accepted this as a lifelong job. Originally it was going to be its own thing, but then I kind of had this revelation that, he's playing into preservation. And even though it's like the surface level preservation, it's also very important because this is what people see. And I also thought having his story be a part of all of these other people's stories, kind of elevates it and makes it so that more people understand who this guy is and what he's done. I mean, freaking Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft have used his photos.
Uncredited.
Yeah, he bought a T-shirt at Target that has an Atari 2600 that was out. Just his photo. It was out. It wasn't like his photo, but it was outlined.
There's a Nintendo 64 one. They had this console on it too.
Yeah.
I always tell it because it didn't have a logo or a label on the cartridge.
Yeah. It's
from Target.
but the stuff he releases is public domain. I mean, credit is nice, but it's, you know, people are free to use this stuff, and it's just an incredible service that he's provided. So, last but not least, that was it.
That went a little bit longer than I thought it was gonna.
Well, you know. So anyway, you know, we're just here talking and whatever, and asking, you know, questions about, you know, this or any RGB questions you have, or anything else you think that we have something to say about.
Yeah. All right. Right here.
How do you two actually meet in the first place?
We met through a site called the Backloggery. It's a game collecting site, and Tri was one of the co-founders of it. And you know, we just got to talking that way because, you know, you track your game collection, but it also tracks, you can track how if you finish the game, if you haven't played it. And it really changed the way that I played games, and we just became friends because we had a very similar video background. You know, about 2 years after I joined the site, maybe a year and a half after. And we met in person at MagFest one year.
And then later that year, we're like, let's make a YouTube channel.
Yeah, because we both have a video background, and we asked, we said, you know, we were really bored with what we were doing at our day jobs. So we said, let's make a YouTube channel, and we can actually edit stuff that we are interested in and are excited about. Yep, we're here.
I have a two-part question.
Okay.
The first one is, what's your favorite video you've made so far?
Mine is definitely the M2 Complete Works documentary that came out a couple months ago. It was the most challenging thing I've ever done, you know, editing in a different language than I speak. But I mean, it was when that finally released, because we shot that last June, and by the time it finally released, it was like I could feel like the welling up inside of me. It felt like this, like a huge part of my life was spent working on this, that like I wanted to cry about it. I didn't, but I wanted to.
For me, it would be the Tom Du Bois documentary that we released, what was it, like maybe January?
Yeah, January.
And
that video like garnered like this incredible response that did not reflect in the number of views it got, which is
yeah. So for people who don't know, Tom Du Bois is the American artist who drew the Western box art for most, or at least a huge chunk of Konami's games from like 88 through 93, I think, at some point in 93. So, you know, you've got like a bunch of Contra games, Operation C, Contra 3.
Bayou Billy.
Bayou Billy. Castlevania 3 is one of the best ones. Castlevania 4. Belmont's Revenge
It's a really unique style, and I think that people, like when most U.S. gamers think of, you know, Konami during those years, they think of those images.
Yes, and I think people also like generally think like, ooh, American box art is worse than Japanese box art, but he was the exception, or a exception.
Yeah.
And you know, just his images are just they really capture the spirit of the game and of the times. And what was so neat about him was he had no idea like
the impact
anyone cared. And you know, because people like us like just hold on to what we love really, really hard. Like his artwork is like, it's never going to be irrelevant because they are attached to some of the most acclaimed games of all time. And
he didn't have any idea.
He had no idea because he wasn't really, he watched some VHS tapes, but he wasn't really playing the games, but he captured that exciting spirit of it. And it was emotional for him too, to start to realize like this impact. So.
And what was the second part?
What's a video that you really want to make but you haven't made yet?
Oh man. I don't know. We have a huge list of videos that we want to make that I feel like we'll never get to them all. And even when it's time to do the next video, we end up doing something that's not on the list. So the list gets longer, but never shorter.
Yeah, I mean, we've got like definitely ideas of like people we would like to interview for more documentaries, but definitely nothing that's really locked down.
We learned a valuable lesson last year. We shot so many interviews and for different documentaries, and most of them aren't out yet. That it's okay. So we will do one at a time going forward.
Yeah, one thing that I kind of have in progress, but had to put on the back burner to get other projects done. When we did a video on Castlevania Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night last year, that was kind of a revelation for us because this was like we wanted to come up with a new format of just game-focused episode that still felt like us. You know, it felt like our
why people watch us for.
Why people watch us for the the overly comprehensive look at things and a little bit of tech to it. And that was a format we've been trying to nail down for a long time. And then all of a sudden, like, we just made a video that's like, oh, this is kind of what we wanted to do. So, like, you did a similar video for Phantasy Star last year. Something that I started doing, which this is, oftentimes we try to stray away from the obvious games. But, like, I mean, I can't help it. I'm a huge Mario fan. And I want to do a video that is, like, how to play all of the 2D Mario games, like, and look at all the different ways you can play them. And I kind of started working on it, but had to go on the back burner. But maybe later this year.
On the back burner when the script was 50 pages.
It didn't get that far yet, but it was on track, maybe. Yeah. So that I think in general, like certain games that we're really passionate about, those we want to do similar videos like that.
Yeah, I'd like to do one for Sonic 1. I've been talking to John Lenneman from Digital Foundry. We want to do because we're both a big fan of the first Sonic game, and there's a billion versions of the first Sonic game. So we thought it'd be like a collaboration, like a Digital Foundry, Marathon Gaming crossover. Yes, sir?
You mentioned the M2 documentary. What was that experience like in Japan?
We had an awesome time in Japan, but it was crazy. That would not have happened without the help of our good friend Jimmy Hoppa from Import Gaming for the Win, and he really made that happen. But we were going all over the place, lugging all this equipment. He was our interpreter for an interview where our hired interpreter could not make it that day, and it was like the most important interview. And Jimmy has never done interpretation before, and nailed it. And he really knew the stuff that they were talking about. Right. So that helps a lot.
Like it was, because I mean, it feels weird to say this, but like we're the right people to interview him too, because like everything to them is this obscure, like specific stuff with old games, and like the general, journalists that might have interviewed them probably haven't spent as much time as we have thinking about
it would have been more of the modern stuff, but we were able to dig deeper and go into some
and
more
it was so
stuff.
awesome how excited, especially Naoki Hori, the president of M2, was to just talk about it, the whole history. He loves to talk about that stuff, and you could see these flashes of excitement in his
but you didn't
eyes.
think we're there until you saw.
Until I saw the flinch, because when you're there interviewing, especially with that gap between waiting for the interpretation and all that, it was hard to really get a sense for how into it he was, especially when you're just focused on shooting and just doing your job. And then when I saw what you were editing, it's oh, he's just he really carries this. He's just got this great personality,
Yeah, but it was very much a dream project that I could not have imagined ever doing. I can't believe it did.
One thing that is definitely something you wouldn't see watching the documentary that just left a huge impression on me was after we were shooting there 3 days, and we left our equipment there every day. The first day we took a taxi there because we didn't want to haul our equipment on the trains again. We had to do that from the airport, and it wasn't fun. And so we took a cab there, and so we were there was one guy there who speaks pretty good English. We asked him, can you call a cab for us or something? And then Naoki Hori heard it, and he was like, oh. So he offered to drive us. He offered to drive us back, and it's like, wow, the president of M2 like drove us back to our hotel. Like that just like left a huge impression on me. Like, wow, that was just like super generous and cool.
Yeah.
And I never would have thought something like that would have happened.
Oh, over here.
With all the hardware and modifications that are out now, is there anything that doesn't exist yet that you, for playing retro games, that you wish you could have?
Oh man.
You know, a year ago, you know, one cool thing about the fact that we shot our interviews for this documentary series last year, and it's taken like a year to get it together. Bob said, you know, my most wanted thing that doesn't exist is a Sega CD optical drive emulator. And I'm really glad that we waited, because that would have been outdated like in a couple of months if I'd finished this, you know, earlier this year.
Yeah.
So that is no longer a valid answer to that question. You know, something that I think a lot of people look at is like, oh, why is it all this focus on Nintendo consoles for HDMI output? Why don't other systems have them? I mean, for one thing, I think people, you know, when people get annoyed that you cover too much Nintendo stuff, I think they don't realize. I mean, Nintendo has been doing this for longer than anyone else who's still in the game. They have more systems. That's just how it is. But another thing, like Sega Genesis, and I think Sega Saturn, maybe Bob probably knows this better than I do, but my understanding is that the way that the video is generated in those systems, you shouldn't really count on getting a direct digital HDMI mod out of like Genesis and Saturn. Is that?
Count it out for Genesis, cross your fingers for Saturn.
Count out for Genesis, cross your fingers for Saturn. So, you know, it's just the way that the hardware is designed. So, I mean, that's stuff I would love, but it's a little bit pie in the sky. I mean, can you think of...
I can't think of any off the top of my head, honestly,
Yeah.
that I wish existed. You know, it's always a pleasant surprise when it's like, oh, someone's making this.
Yeah.
You know? I'm excited for a PS2 HDMI.
Which I do think is happening, right?
Dan's working on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
You know, like a RGB mod for 3DO, which Dan is also working on.
Right here?
Do you guys look forward to collaborating with anyone or any company in specific, like in the near future?
We have nothing
Like
planned, do we?
You mean in terms of like documentaries or just...
Yeah, like some
Well, I mean,
group
that's-
or a company that you'd like to work with.
Like documentary stuff is something that I hope that we get more chances to do, especially stuff like M2. I would love to go and talk to people, different developers.
Yeah.
more often.
We actually visited Digital Eclipse.
Yeah.
In you know the San Francisco Bay Area, mostly to get stuff for the M2 documentary, because they're kind of like the American equivalent of M2. And
they invited us to shoot like as much as we wanted. So we ended up interviewing a ton of people at Digital Eclipse, because I wanted to do a video that goes into the differences between when Digital Eclipse was cranking out these gigantic compilations years ago, like on the PS2 and earlier, and then they kind of disappeared for a while and came back, and now they're doing these more curated focus collections. You know, how are they different now compared to then? You know, a lot of like.
Yeah. So we're planning to put together like a complete piece on them, but there's definitely other companies we really want to go back to Japan, and we've got maybe some possible inroads to either certain companies or maybe even just individual people, like musicians or something, just to do profiles on them. I mean, it's possible.
Like a dream project would be like a Yuzo Koshiro Complete Works. I can't even imagine that.
David Wise.
David Wise. I mean, I tried to interview David Wise at MagFest a few years ago, but it didn't work out.
So we had a couple of near misses with him. We were running around the hotel and just missed him several times.
It's hard to see where all the hands are.
Up here.
RGB on a PVM or HDMI on?
Oh, what would you prefer?
The way that my setup has been set up for a while, I've been favoring using like the OSSC on a PV on my OLED TV, and certainly, you know, in my opinion, the colors are better on the OLED through the OSSC than through on PVM. But and it's like one frame of lag. It's on my TV. I mean, not the OSSC, but that's been my way of playing because, you know, big TV, comfortable seat. I'm actually planning to sort of rearrange things because I don't have room in my living room for everything anymore. So I'm going to like make a separate retro space, and that is going to be very much PVM focused. But you know, I'm pretty. I don't have a strong preference, honestly, and I think I think some people think we're like opinionated or something, but like I'm pretty. I think this stuff is interesting, but I'm not like hardlined about any particular way, you know.
Yeah. I'd say PVM all day long. I just prefer it, and it's, you know, the way it's integrated in my setup just makes it easier to capture. You know, a lot of times I have a monitor, like a computer monitor, also mounted above the PVM, so I can watch what I'm capturing up there and playing on the PVM. But, right up here.
Okay. I was wondering about like the best way to get pictures out of like more obscure consoles like the Marty, the PC Effects.
As a lot of times when we kind of getting into an episode, we're kind of learning it at the time.
Yeah.
So and
yeah.
that would be a prime example where we don't really know at all.
Yeah.
Right now. I mean, we're not afraid to say that we don't know a lot of things when
Or just ask Bob.
Yeah. we have a lot of people that, you know, these episodes would not be possible without, because, you know, we have a lot of people that fact check, make suggestions, you know, walk us through things. You know, Bob is very much one of those people. Artemio Urbina, who made the 240p test suite. The nicest person in the world, probably. And,
yes, not probably, definitely.
The stuff would not be nearly as complete without everybody's help.
Mm-hmm.
We would not be able to do what we do without them.
Yeah, as far as the Marty goes, I mean, hey, video output mods were made for the Virtual Boy. So I guess anything is possible, but it depends on if anyone has the interest to do it. But what I would say for systems like that probably aren't going to have an RGB mod or whatever, you know, the RetroTink is like my go-to recommendation for if you're stuck with composite or S-video or some lower grade signal, like that is right now, I feel, the best way to get a good signal out of those systems for an HD TV.
Some of my more favorite videos are like maybe the obscure stuff like the game soundtracks or controller adapters, that sort of thing. Do you have any of those maybe type of videos in the pipeline right now?
I'm definitely coming back to the controller thing. I want to do a first-party controllers episode. Even the third-party controllers episode was like our most popular non-RGB video. So of course we're going to kind of come back and do something with that. And I do want to do something on first-party controllers so I can...
Like the different variations.
Yeah, like different variations, but also some other stuff like the mission stick from like the Sega Saturn mission stick. Stuff like that I think would be so much fun to do an episode. And that's already like planned. It's just a matter of finding a time to do it. That was a very unique situation where we edited our own segments and then put together for a video that somehow is almost an hour long. It was nice to be able to make a video that was only our parts were not very long and then come together to make something really...
Yeah, it's like you put in the effort that was half of the video's length, and it's like, oh, we released this huge video, but it didn't feel like it. And that's always nice.
Like something like that happened with the Mega SG as well. You know, I did all the sound stuff, and then we had this video that was probably twice as long than it needed to be.
But we always love to hear that when people are like, oh, I love this thing that you do that isn't RGB. It's always really nice to hear people say that, because like, well, people, you know, watch us for RGB, and that's okay. But you know, it's nice to hear that as well.
Over here.
Are you and HD Retrovision planning a dual release where at the same time the Dreamcast cables and your CRT calibration video?
CRT calibration. I mean, CRT calibration videos. I have
a mistake.
Yeah, I should never have mentioned it, and I would like to do it, but there is a YouTube channel called Retro Tech that does more stuff with, you know, service menus and PVMs and everything than we could ever hope to cover, and I highly recommend checking out Retro Tech on YouTube, because this stuff is also, you know, lives in Well, he lives down by Nashville, so it's like only like 4 hours away from me.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of the HD Retrovision Dreamcast cables, hopefully, we're hoping that that's like the cutoff point for like, okay, we're waiting for more Dreamcast stuff before we do a comprehensive Dreamcast episode. Like that's what we're waiting for. It's like, okay, when the HD Retrovision cables are available, I don't care what comes out for Dreamcast after that. We're finally going to do the episode.
It'd be nice if it was this year.
It'd be nice. We'll see.
Anybody else? Oh, I'm here.
Have you guys seen anyone in the community sort of focus on preserving Wii U? So I know a lot of people don't care about it now, but I'm thinking like 20 years in the future, people are going to be like this tablet thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky situation because, I mean, the system won't even really come on if you don't have the... I've never done like Wii homebrew or anything, or Wii U homebrew, so I don't know if there's like a workaround for like how you have to use the tablet, but I mean that could, people are probably going to have to like come up with like new battery designs and stuff. Like, is it goes away? I mean, I don't know like how reliable the hardware is really going to be. I mean, I'd like to hope it's going to be reasonably reliable, but anything with like a that needs active cooling like a fan, I always do worry a little bit about that. But I don't really know a lot about.
And strangely, as soon as they stopped manufacturing, they pulled it from store shelves. It seems like it just disappeared everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be interesting. Yep, right up here.
First time my question was thank you for all the good videos. You actually introduced me to that Game Boy interface thing. It was kind of useful.
Thank you.
On the Game Boy handheld thing. I guess I have like 2 quick questions. One is if you can make an RGB video on any system you want, what would it be?
Dreamcast.
I mean, we are pretty close. Like, I've kind of taken the lead on the Nintendo stuff, and we're pretty close to the end of those. I mean, of course, we're still going to continue to do update videos on systems as new things come out, but like the main original RGB 200. Gosh, it's hard to say. I mean, I want to get into. I've been starting to get Game Gear games, but I don't have a Game Gear yet. I'm kind of excited to do the Game Gear episode because I want to finally get around to having some sort of usable consoleized Game Gear. And PC Engine. I mean, that's a system
that's a big one too. Yeah.
PC Engine is a fun system because there's a lot of different hardware to look at, and we think we have access to almost everything.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Not all stuff that we own, but we can get access to, and that's just a fun thing to look at because of just how many there are. And then it's a system that I've come to appreciate in a way that I didn't think I would.
Mm-hmm.
So,
up here.
You always talk about LCD versus CRTs, but would you ever think of like plasmas? And also, when is the CDI RGB video coming?
Plasmas. I mean, I don't know. I can't bring another TV in my house. That would kill me, especially if it's like a plasma.
Every once in a while, I'll see a plasma at a thrift store, and I'm like, I should just have that.
Yeah.
But I never pull the trigger. I mean, personally, this might just be biased because like most of my exposure to plasma has been my aunt and uncle have a few plasma TVs, and I don't know if they just were not calibrated right or whatever, but I always thought they looked really washed out. I was never that impressed by them, although true video files, I guess still think plasma has like the best color ever. I've not been impressed with what I have seen, but I'm sure there are much better plasmas than the ones that I've really spent a lot of time looking at. I would love to have one because it's a valuable, different type of display technology that I would like to be able to show and know more about, but.
And you've been kind of dabbling in projectors.
I have, yeah. I've a store near me like kind of sells like it's a Goodwill owned store, but it's like all electronics and old games and stuff. And you can just walk in there and buy any number of different kinds of projectors for not much money. And I do want to do an episode that's like, can you dip your toe into gaming on projectors without spending a lot of money? And I think the answer is yes. So I think that's that's pretty fun. I mean, I bought this projector from I think it's like a 2007 model. That, from what I could tell, is probably like a mid-upper range home theater projector. It takes the Super Nintendo games through the OSSC at 5x. I mean, there you go. What more do you want?
And CDI, I don't know.
There was a CDI at my dentist's office, and I always regretted that I never worked up the courage to ask him before he retired. Do you really need that? Right here.
Do you have any video ideas that resisted and insisted on not being made? As in, it's this particular device, and there's no way to capture it, or the research into more information on it you couldn't find, or you couldn't set up the interviews, or a tree would always fall in front of your driveway when you're trying to get out to do it.
CRT calibration.
One of the most difficult videos, and it was just really a timing thing for me, was late last year. We did a video that was kind of an update on GameCube video quality, because there had been a number of devices that came out since we did our first GameCube video. And we're like, let's cover the GCHD, that was an HDMI adapter, and let's cover the Carby, which is also an HDMI adapter. And a week after I started writing the stuff, then Eon was like, we're teasing something new. And then Insurrection Gaming, who makes the Carby, was like, we're also making component cables. And I'm like, dang it.
It was such a moving target, and you said I don't want to play the GameCube forever.
It was so that
you said I've never hated making an episode as much as I make it.
It was just really difficult, because I just was stumbling blocks along the way just because of the timing of everything and trying to test everything, and I wish I had picked another topic and then done that a month later, but it was a very difficult process of just testing everything. I mean, I thought that GameCube video was more of a settled thing by that point,
right.
But it turned out that there were still some bugs with the open source firmware that hadn't been discovered yet, because no one had made an analog